Advent of Code problem 1. And in part 1 we're going for the simplest possible code. I'm going to use the replit environment to begin with, not my preferred environment, but kind of the most basic approach. And then I'm going to show how to do it in Vim in terminal. Part 2 will have more sophisticated code, which would set you up better for solving problem after problem after problem. I will try to keep it to the point, but I'm deliberately improvising rather than going from a preset preset approach. Okay, to begin with, I'm going to click this button up here so that we have a bit more screen space. Here's the problem. Okay, I'm not going to read through it. We have some test data here. I'm going to copy that test data and we'll make use of it. And the real data, if I click here, it opens a new, right, and there's a lot of data there. So I'm going to be copying all that into a file. Okay, so I'll make this visible and I'm going to put my new file, and I'll call this o1-test.txt. And while I'm at it, I'll create a new file with o1.txt. And so here, oh, okay, that's an old, just get rid of that. And paste there we go, there's the test data. And I might as well get the real data here. So just select all, Command A, copy, and then go over here and paste. All right, so 2,264 lines. All right, so you can see in the one place I have my code and I have two text files. Now imagine please that we solve problems 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. We're going to get a lot of these text files there. So I'm actually going to create a new folder here. Let's call it data. And I can just drag that into there and drag that into there. And so now things won't get cluttered. I can kind of open and close that if you like. All right, I can click on these anytime to have a look at what's in them. All right, so let's start piece by piece. The first thing, in order to solve the problem, I need the data, right? So I can do this. I can do f equals open o1 test.txt, and I could print f.readlines. Okay, now if I run that, I'm going to get a fail because I need to put the directory in. So there we go, data. All right, run that. I'm hitting Command Enter to run, by the way. And there you go, you can see we've got a list of lines. Now we want these to be integers, yeah? How about I try this, data, okay, data equals int x for x in f.readlines. And I'm going to print data. Now this will have an error because it says invalid literal for int with base 10. So remember when we printed the read lines, okay, so I might as well just say lines equals f.readlines, and then here I can say for x in lines. Now if I print lines, then some of them are just a blank line. We know that there are blank lines in there, and so that's represented with just a new line. Now if we go over here and experiment, and you try to get the integer value of just a new line or the integer value of a blank string, you get an error. Okay, and so what we're going to have to do when we solve the problem, right? So maybe I'll get the lines from the file, yeah, and then I can say for line in lines. And so what do I want to do to solve this problem? Well, I need to know, right? It's important when we go through it, we need to go through a line at a time, bang, 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 and then when we hit an empty line, we need to do something different. So I know that I need to have some code that says basically if line is empty, right? Now that's not valid Python. So first of all, actually, I'm going to do this line equals line dot strip. That removes the new line from the end. So I'm going to show you REPR will print the representation of the line. So here you can see that there are no new lines. If I comment that out and print the representation of each, you can see there's a new line on each. Now, interesting, there's no new line after the 10,000. I find that a bit annoying, actually, because like each line should have, you know, a new line at the end of it. I'm going to put that there and see what difference that makes. There we go. All right, but we do want to strip the new lines away, and so now we can say if line is equal to an empty line, then what are we going to do here? We're going to accumulate our running sum, and we're going to set the running sum to 0. Right now, if we have a running sum, we're going to need, okay, so we're going to have a running sum, what we set to 0, and then otherwise, if it's not an empty line, we will, okay, actually I think, all right, what are we actually trying to do here? When we get the 1,000 plus 2,000 plus 3,000, that's 6,000. We need to do something with that. So we're going to, right, now, the obvious approach for a beginner here is to say, oh, I need to keep track of what the maximum is so far, right? That's actually kind of not the best, all right? So what I'd like to do is say, right, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, that makes 6,000, 6,000 goes into a list. Then 4,000, that 4,000 goes into a list. Then 5,000, 6,000, so 11,000 goes into the list. Okay, so I might call this sums equals empty list, and we're going to and say running sum is equal to 0. Okay, so we're going to when the if the line is blank, then we append the running sum to our list and then set the running sum to 0 so that it can start calculating the running sum. Okay, accumulate our running sum, that just means add the current value to our running sum, and that should be it. Okay, and we just keep going through the list, and we should be good. All right, so let's turn this into actual code. So append running sum to our list. So that means sums dot append running sum, and set running sum to 0. All right, and then now accumulate our running sum is just running sum plus equals what? The current value. Right now I don't have a current value really, do I? So when we read the line and then when we strip the line is still a string. So the current value is the integer value of the line. Now notice that if we take the integer value of an empty line, then we'll get an error, but if we're in this line of code here, we're in the else part, so there's no empty line, right? This is where line is empty, and this is where line is not empty. All right, so that should be good. And if I print the sums, then I should get a list. There we go. All right, so we've got a collection of our running sums. And so just for beginning programmers, you're so used to kind of throwing all concerns together, like as you go, you need to keep track of, you have code like if the current running sum is greater than the maximum running sum, then set the maximum running sum. Okay, no, we don't need to do that. We can just produce a list, and now the answer to problem 1, part 1, is the maximum of the sums. All right, and so we'll print answer. Okay, and we get 24,000. That's the correct value for the test data. And now if I change it to the real data and run, then I get this value. Now you won't get the same value because we have different input data. And so if I just copy that to here, right, I got the right answer. Right, I get 1 gold star. And now if I continue to part 2, so part 1's still visible up here, part 2, okay, now I'm assuming maybe you haven't seen this yet. The summary is we need to find the sum of the top 3 values, okay? The sum of the top 3 values. And I'm not encouraging you to rush through this. I'm encouraging you to read carefully. I just don't want the video to be long and boring. So how do I adapt this to get the sum of the top 3 top 3 values? Okay, so I might change this to answer 1A, right? And now I guess I'll maybe continue to print that, but now part 1B is the sum of top 3 values, and I'll put a comment in here as well. Part 1A maximum value. Okay. Now, to get the top 3, I'm going to just take a step back and print the sums, so the entire list, right? And that should be pretty big because the input data was pretty big. Okay, so I need to get the top 3 values out of this. Now, these are not in any particular order. If they were in order, I'd be able to get the top 3 pretty easily. So what I'm going to do is sort them. So sums.sort. Okay, and I appreciate that beginning programmers don't often know, how to do this. But if you know, oh, I want the list to be in order, but I don't know how to do it, just Google Python, put list in order, right? And you'll find out pretty quickly. And if that fails, just ask somebody. Okay, so now they're in sorted order, and I'd like to get the last 3. Okay, so now please note that you don't do like sums equals sums.sort, okay? You just do this, it sorts it in place. Now I don't want to print the sums anymore, and I can say answer 1B equals sums, like the last one, plus the second last one, plus the third last one, and I'll print answer 1B. Okay, so we've got answer 1A, we've got answer 1B. I'll copy that, oops, and paste it here. Okay, and that's the right answer. And now I'm going to, right, so problem 2 is open. Now, just in case you didn't know this, problem 2 is open to everybody. It's open at a certain time. It doesn't depend on you having done problem 1. Okay. Now, I'm not going to even read this. All I'm going to do is just show you how I'm going to deal with the data. So that looks like test data. So I'm going to go to data, and I'm going to add a file and go o2.test.txt. I'm going to paste that, put a new line, and I'm going to get the puzzle input. And go, data, add file, o2.text, there we go. And I'm going to paste that. All right. So 2,500 lines of rock, paper, scissors data. Now, and then in my main file, I can make this disappear. Now, how am I going to structure this? Well, I don't want to create a new project for every problem, right? I want to be able to have them all in this one file, but I don't want to run everything every time. So the answer to that is to put things in functions, right? So here I'm going to say def problem1, and I'll just select everything to do with problem 1 and indent it, right? And so now, if I run the code, absolutely nothing happens. And I can say problem 1 over here, and there we go, right? And so actually, given that I'll probably run the code, like, let's say I was working on the 4th problem, I might just go over here and type P0, like I might just change the name to P01, okay? So that's done. Now, one last thing before I move on. This sums -1 plus sums -2 plus sums -3. What I can do is I can take the sum, so that's built into Python, take the sum, like if you ask it for the sum of a bunch of things, then, I need to run it. Okay, and sum takes at most 2 arguments. Wow. Okay, my apologies. I thought this was going to... Right, so now I've got the sum of this list, right? I thought I'd be able to take the sum of as many things as I like. There are ways, but I'm not going to go into that. So basically, I think I'll just keep this as it was. All right, I was going to do something cooler, but all right. So anyway, all of this is now encapsulated in P01, right? And when I work on problem 2, okay, I'll leave a couple of lines blank and go P02, and then I'll put a pass, just means I'm not doing anything for now, but it leaves the file syntactically valid. And yeah, probably put a comment at the top of each one. Problem 1, elf calories or something, and then problem 2, rock, paper, scissors. That's what it appears to be about. Okay, just showing that, yeah, we can now put lots of things in this one file, but they're all separated because they're all a function. And then when I'm actually working on problem 2, I can actually just call it here, and then when I run, okay, now nothing's going to happen here because of the pass, but if I replace the pass with print hello, then of course when I run the file, I'm going to see hello. Okay, so that's kind of done this pretty well in replit. I'm going to show how to do the same thing in terminal in Vim. Won't take too long. I do just want to point out like what's coming up in more sophisticated, right? So I don't want to be opening files in every problem, all right? I want to be able to just, what I really want to be able to do is just say get data equals, well, I'll give the game away. I'm going to say data slash problem 1 or something like that, okay? And deal with the file reading elsewhere. Okay. And by the way, you should close files when you open them, but I'm not going to worry about that now. That's not really a problem for programs that only run for a short time. Okay, I'm going to get into Vim now and just show how to do the same thing. So I'm in my home directory here. If I type pwd, that's present working directory, and I'm in users G Sinclair. I'm going to make directory advent of code. I would put the year in because you do this every year. Okay, I'm going to cd to that directory. All right. So now my present working directory is in there. The directory is empty. And what am I trying to replicate here? Well, I want to make a data file, a data folder. So I go make directory data, and I want to create. Well, let me start just with an empty Vim session. Right now, what do I do? Now, if I go command pwd, then it tells me where I am. Okay, and so I want to edit. Right, edit. What have I got? Main.py. I don't have to call it main.py, but I'll do that. And I'm going to I'll copy all this code. Okay, so I've got all this code here, right? And I think I'll get rid of that and just focus on problem one. All right, so, and okay, problem one, elf calories, def PO1. Okay, so I've got everything working here, but I need to create the data file, don't I? Now, how do I do that? Well, the data folder already exists. I'm going to edit data / 01 test.txt. So I've got an empty file here. I need to go back and get the contents of that. Okay, back to my Vim. All right, so there we go. I've got that. All right. Now, how do I get back to my code? Well, there's a couple of ways. If you do Control-Shift-6, so that then you can bounce between two files that you're editing, right? Here's something else you need to know. So :ls gives you a list of all files that are currently open, and these are called buffers, right? So I just listed the buffers, and so they've got numbers 1 and 3. So if I now go :b1, and there doesn't need to be a space, then I'll go there, and :b3, I'll go there, right? I can also go :b and then just type main, right? It'll look for any buffer that has main in the title, okay? And if I go b, even just tx, that'll just catch the tx in txt. Okay, so you can move around like that. Now, here's another thing you can do, right? I'm going to go v new, and that's created a vertical split, and I can go to buffer.txt here, so I can have them open both at the same time, right? And I can use the mouse to change the size, right? And so if I'm here now, if I want to open the real test file, the real data file, well, it's not in my ls, right? I've now got a buffer called no name, because when I created a new file, then when I created a new split, that gave me a buffer called no name, right? And that's not a file yet because I haven't saved it. So if I want to edit a file that's not currently open, then I need to use edit. Now you just abbreviate that to E, all right? And that's in the data directory and O1, and you can tab complete. And well, sorry, I don't have it yet, evidently. O1.text, right? And now I'll go and get the data from that. Insert node, paste. Okay, the plus down here means it's not written yet. Escape, write the file, Okay, and now that's done. And if maybe I don't want to look at this anymore and don't like, I can close the window with Control W, Control C. That's window and close. Or I can just quit this. Okay. Now if I do an ls, right, then it's still there. I can still, I can go buffer 5, and I can see it, or back to buffer 1. Okay, now there are more advanced, more sophisticated ways of getting around to different files and so on, but this is like basic stuff that's built into Vim. Just as a preview, right, I've got something here that that allows me to look at things just like in replit, right? And I can open and close that easily. Also, I can open this thing that like opens all my buffers and just go, yep, I want that one, or I have main.py, whatever. Anyway, that's now. What about running this in Vim? So that should be known. You want to go !3 and then the file name. Okay, now my program doesn't currently do anything, so I'll just put that in. And then if I do this, there we go. Right, so you've got to have it saved before you run it. So that's why we do write and then that. Okay, so that worked. Or you can have another terminal open or another tab within the terminal. Okay, if I go Command T, I've now got another tab. I'm in my home directory. Go to Advent of Code, and I can go !3 main.py. And I kind of prefer having a set. Well, I mean, it's good to run it quickly in here, but sometimes, especially if it's producing a lot of data, I might like to look at it over here. So anyway, you've got options, and if you want help with any aspect of it, just ask me. Okay, so I think we've done enough for one video. Right, but just, to move on with Vim, then of course you're going to need to save new data. You can just have this open, right, and just, edit data o2.txt. That's creating a new file, right, and then paste your data in and write it, and there it is, and go back to your main code. Okay, now here's another. I'm going to quit that. Right, so if I do a list of the data directory here, by the way, you can just type tree and see that. You can see that there's no data o2. So I created, I didn't create the file. I created a new buffer with that name, but because I never wrote it, then the file never got created. Here's another way to make a file. Okay, so I'm going to first of all copy all of this. Right, I'm going to go cat greater than data o2.txt, and now it's waiting for me to type something. Well, I'm just going to paste all of that, and then to end this I go Control D, and that brings me back to my prompt, and now you can see that data o2.txt exists. Okay, and you can go cat data o2.txt, and there it is. All right, so I think that's definitely enough for one video. Make sure you watch part 2 to see a more sophisticated approach to the file reading and to solving the problem. Cheerio.